Friends, my channel name is Indian Epic History. Search this channel name on YouTube and go to the playlist for all videos like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puran from starting. Otherwise, click the channel name below the video, then go to the playlist. This is Buri Critical Valmiki Ramayana book, chapter 2, Ayodhya Kand. Friends, Ramayana have 6 kandas. Bal Kanda is complete. Now I am starting Ayodhya Kand. Okay, so these are slokas, and chapter 2:1 means Ayodhya Kand, first chapter. After some time, King Dasharatha, descendant of the Raghu lineage, spoke to his son Bharata, who was Kaikeyi's son. O son, Yudhajit is the brave son of the king of Kaikeya. Your maternal uncle come to take you there and has been residing here. Hearing Dasaratha's word, Bharata, Kaikeyi's son, made arrangements to leave. Along with Satrughna, the brave one, best among men, took his leave of his father Rama, the performer of unblemished deeds, and his mother, and left with Shatrughna. Yudhajit was delighted, taking Bharata and Shatrughna, the brave one, entered his own city, and his father rejoiced. With his brother, he was treated with great honor like a son. He was affectionately reared by his uncle, who was a lord of horses. They resided there and enjoyed all the objects of desire. However, the brave brothers remembered their aged father, King Dasharatha. The immensely energetic king also remembered the two sons who were away, Bharata and Satrughna, who were like the great Indra and Varuna. He loved those 4 bulls among men equally, as if they were 4 arms growing out of his own body. Among them, the greatly energetic Rama brought great delight to his father, endowed with superior qualities. He was like Swayambhu to creatures. When Bharata had gone, Rama and immensely strong Lakshmana tended to their father, who was like a god. Placing his father's instructions at the forefront, Rama, with dharma in his soul, performed all the agreeable and pleasant tasks required by the citizens. Supremely attentive, he tended to all the tasks required by their mothers. All the time, he took care of all the tasks required by the preceptors. In this way, because of Rama's good conduct, Dasharatha, the learned Brahmanas, and all the residents of the kingdom were delighted. He was also peaceful in his soul and spoke gently. He did not respond to harsh and loud words spoken by others. He was content with whatever good deed was done to him, even if 100 acts of injury were committed against him, he did not remember them. Whenever he found time while practicing with weapons, he always conversed with those who were aged, whether they were aged in conduct or wisdom, and with virtuous people. His birth was fortunate. He was virtuous and not distressed. He was truthful and upright. He was instructed by aged Brahmanas who were conversant with Dharma and Artha. He knew about Dharma, Artha, and Kama. He possessed memory and innate intelligence. He was skilled and accomplished in prevalent customs. He knew about the sacred text and about how they should be followed. He understood differences among people. He was accomplished in policy and knew about whom to reward and whom to punish. He knew about earning revenue and was accomplished in the techniques of expenditure. He obtained instructions about the best collections of sacred text and about the oscillatory text. He knew that Artha should not be accumulated through adharma. He was not lazy when pursuing pleasure. He was acquainted with details about artisanship and the fine arts. He knew how to control and ride elephants and horses. He was best among those who knew about Dhanurveda. The world reverted him as an Atiratha. He was accomplished in commanding armies and could strike while advancing. The prince exhibited the best of qualities while dealing with the subjects. He was reverted in the three worlds, and his qualities of forgiveness was like those of the earth. He was like Brihaspati in his wisdom and like Sachi's consort in his valor. He was thus loved by all the subjects and brought joy to his father. Rama was radiant in his qualities like the sun with his rays. With its rays, he followed all the vows, and his valor was unassailable. The earth desired him as her protector, as if he was a guardian of the world. Rama was endowed with many such supreme qualities. On seeing this, Dasharatha's crusher of enemies started to think. A great reason for delight began to circulate in his heart. When will I see my son instead as their heir? His prosperity in this world is growing, and he is compassionate towards all creatures. Like Parjanya showering down, he is loved more than me in the world. He is like Yama and Shakra in his valor, and like Brihaspati in his wisdom. He is like the earth in patience and is superior to me in qualities. Will I see my son instead over this entire earth? As I age, will I behold this and then ascended to heaven? The great king saw that he was endowed with all these qualities. With his advisers, he determined that he would be made the heir apparent. He summoned all the foremost kings on earth and all those who resided in different cities and habitations. All of them seated themselves in different seats earmarked by the king. Attentive, all those kings seated themselves and looked towards the king. All the revered and humble kings and men from cities and habitations seated themselves. Surrounded by them, he looked like the one with 1,000 eyes, surrounded by the immortals. 1,000 eyes means Indra. Next chapter 2. The Lord of Man invited all the courtiers. He spoke these unmatched, beneficial, and agreeable words. His voice was deep, like the rumbling of a drum. The king's voice was great, like the rumbling of the clouds. Kings from the Ishvaku lineage have ruled there earlier. I wish that this entire earth, which deserves happiness, should be full of welfare. I have acted in accordance with followed the path of my ancestors. The best of my capacity, I have attentively protected the subjects. In ensuring the welfare of the world, this entire body of mine has decayed and has become pale from the shadow of the umbrella. I have obtained a lifespan lasting for many thousand years. Since the body has decayed, I desire to rest. Regal power is extremely difficult to bear and can only be sustained by a person who has conquered his senses. I am exhausted from bearing the extremely heavy burden of dharma that holds up the world. Engaging my son in the welfare of the subjects, I desire to rest. After taking the permission of all the bulls among Brahmanas who were nearby, my eldest son Rama, the conqueror of enemy cities, possesses all the qualities. He is Purandaras equal in valor. He is supreme among those who uphold dharma. He is like the moon in conjunction with Pushya Nakshatra. I will cheerfully anoint that bull among men as the heir apparent. As a preceptor, Lakshmana's prosperous elder brother is like the preceptor of the three worlds. He will be the supreme preceptor by entrusting the entire earth to such a son now. I will do what is beneficial and ensure that it suffers from no hardships. Delighted the kings loudly welcome the words of the king, like peacocks crying in delight when they see a giant cloud showering down. All of them got to know the desire and sentiments of the aged king Dasharatha, who was accomplished in dharma and artha, O king, having lived for many thousand years. You are aged, O king, therefore consecrate Rama as the heir apparent. Hearing their words, the king got to know what was agreeable to their minds. He had not known this earlier and wished to rest them. He spoke these words, I follow Dharma and rule over this earth. Why do you then wish to see my son instead as the their apparent? All the inhabitants of the city and the countryside replied to the great souled one, O king, your son possesses many auspicious qualities. Rama has truth for his valor invested with divine qualities. He is like Shakra, means Indra. O Lord of the earth, he is superior to all those in the Ishvaku lineage. Rama is devoted to truth and dharma and is a virtuous man in this world. He knows about dharma and never wavers from the truth. He is good in conduct and suffers from no jealousy. He is patient and comforting. He speaks gently and is grateful. He has conquered his senses. He is mild and his mind is not fickle. He is always good in behavior and does not suffer from envy. Towards all creatures, he is pleasant in speech. Raghava is truthful in speech. He worships the aged Brahmanas who are extremely learned. His deeds and fame are infinite and are increasing. He is accomplished in all the weapons of gods, asuras, and humans. With Saumitri, means Lakshman, when he advances into a battle for the sake of a village of a city, he does not return without being victorious. When he returns from a battle, whether it is on an elephant or a chariot, he always asks about the welfare of the citizens and their relatives. Progressively, he asks about everything their sons, their sacrificial fires, their wives, their servants, and their disciples, like a father asking about his own biological sons. He attentively asks us whether our disciples are tending to our needs. This is what Rama, Tiger among men, always asks us. He is extremely miserable when people suffer from hardships. In all festivals, he is as satisfied as a father. He is truthful and a great archer. He has conquered his senses and served the aged. It is good fortunate that Raghava has been born to you as an excellent son. It is good fortune that you have a son with such qualities like Kashyapa was to Marichi. Rama's soul is known, all the people in the kingdom and in this supreme city, all the people who are inside and outside the city and the countryside, women, aged and young, morning and night, all of them attentively desire strength, freedom from disease, and a long life for him. They bow down before all the gods, wishing fame for Rama. Through prayers to the gods they worship, and through your favors, we will obtain prosperity, O king. We will see your son Rama with the complexion of a dark lotus, the destroyer of enemies, wherever, everywhere instead, as the heir apparent. Your son is like the god of the gods. He is engaged in the welfare of the worlds, O one who grants boons. For the sake of welfare, you should swiftly and cheerfully instead the one who is generous in qualities. Next chapter, third. The king joined his hands, which were like lotuses in salutation. He accepted their words. Having accepted them, he spoke these agreeable and beneficial words to them. I am extremely delighted, and my power has become unmatched. Now that you desire that my beloved eldest son should be instead as the heir apparent, the king worshipped the Brahmanas, Vashishta and Vamadeva, and told them, listen, this is the prosperous and sacred month of Chitra. The groves are full of blossoming flowers. Let all the arrangements be made for Rama to become the heir apparent. Delighted and full of joy, those two bulls among Brahmanas told the Lord of the earth, everything has been arranged as you had instructed. The radiant King spoke these words to Sumantra, bring Rama, cleansed in his soul. Here quickly Sumantra plagued to do what the king had asked him to. He brought Rama supreme among charioteers. There is a chariot. King Dasharatha seated himself. He was surrounded by kings from the east, the west, the north, and the south. There was Mlechas and Aryas and others who resided in forest and extremities of mountains. All of them seated themselves there, like the gods around Vashava. The royal sage was in their midst, like Vashava among the Maruts. From the place he saw that his son had arrived on a chariot. He was like a king of the Gandharvas. He was famous in this world because of his manliness. He was long armed and great in spirit. His state was like that of a crazy elephant. Rama's face was pleasant to behold, like the moon. His beauty, generosity, and qualities stole the sight and hearts of men. Like rain, he gladdened subjects who had been tormented by the summer. The king was not satisfied from looking at him. Raghava descended from the supreme chariot. Hands joined in salutation, he approached his father Sumantra following at the rear to see the king. Along with the charioteer Raghava, bull among men, climbed up to the place which was like the commit of Kailasha. Having approached his father, he joined his hands in salutation. He worshipped at his father's feet and recited his own name. On seeing him bow down, join his hands in salutation, and stand near him, the king embraced his beloved son. The king gave Rama a beautiful and supreme seat. It was tall and beautiful, adorned with gems and gold. Having ascended that supreme seat, Raghava dazzled with his own resplendence like the sparkling and rising sun atop Meru. His radiance made the assembly shine like the resplendence of the moon amid its planets and nakshatras in a clear autumn sky. On seeing his beloved son, the king was delighted, just as one is happy to see one's ornamented person reflected in a mirror. The king supreme among those who have sons smiled and spoke these words to his son, like Kashyapa to Indra of the gods. You have been born to my eldest wife and are a son who is just like me. O Rama, you have been born with the best of qualities and are the most beloved of my sons. You have delighted the subjects with your qualities. Therefore, at the conjunction of Pushya, you will be instead as the here apparent. Your nature is extremely humble. You possess the qualities, O son. Through you possess the qualities out of affection for you. I will tell you something for your welfare. Be even more humble. Always conquer your senses. Cast aside any direction that arise because of desire and anger. Use direction and indirect means of examination to keep all the advisors and ordinary people happy. If you protect the earth in that way, the ordinary people will be satisfied and devoted. Your friends will rejoice like the immortals having obtained Amrita. O son, therefore act towards them as towards one's own self. On hearing this, Rama's well-wishers, who wished to do him well, quickly went to Kaushalya and told her what had happened. Kaushalya, supreme among women, gave her friends gold, cattle, and many kinds of jewels. Raghava honored the king and ascended his chariot. Worshipped by a large number of people, he went to his radiant house. Having heard the citizens had obtained what they had wished for, they worshipped the king. Obtaining the king's permission, they went to their own houses and joyfully offered worships to the gods. Next chapter 4. When the citizen had left, the king who was firm in taking decisions that needed to be taken consulted with his ministers. There is a conjunction of Pushya tomorrow, my son, Lord Rama, with eyes that are as coppery red as a red lotus, will be instead as their apparent tomorrow. After this, King Dasharatha entered the inner quarters of his residence and again instructed the charioteer that Rama should be brought. Obeying these words, the charioteer swiftly left for Rama's residence again so as to bring Rama. The gatekeepers informed Rama that he had arrived again. On hearing that he had come, Rama was worried. Having allowed him to enter, Rama addressed him in these words: "Tell me completely the reason for your arrival." Thus addressed, the charioteer replied, "The king wishes to see you. On hearing this, you have to decide whether to go or stay." Hearing the charioteer's word, Rama swiftly left for the king's residence so as to see the king. On hearing that Rama had arrived, King Dasharatha instructed that he should enter the house. He wished to speak some agreeable and supreme words. The handsome Raghava entered his father's residence. On seeing his father from a distance, he joined his hands in salutation and prostrated himself. The king raised the one who was prostrate and embarrassed him. He offered him a beautiful seat and again spoke, "O Rama, I am aged and have lived for a long time. I have enjoyed all the desired objects of pleasure. I have performed hundreds of sacrifices at which I have offered food and copious quantities of dakshina. I have had the desired offspring, and you are unmatched on earth, O supreme among men. I have donated and studied as I wished, O brave Brahmana. I have felt the desired happiness. I have repaid the debt due to gods, rishis, ancestors, Brahmanas, and towards my own self. No other task remain but for you to be consecrated. Therefore, I am engaging you in undertaking what needs to be done. Now, all the ordinary people desire that you should be a king. O son, therefore, I wish to instate you as their apparent. O Rama, in my sleep, I see many kinds of terrible portents, showers of giant meteors descendant from the sky, and they make a loud noise. Those who know about portents tell me that terrible planets, the sun, Angaraka, and Rahu, and approaching the nakshatra, whenever such evil portents present themselves, the king dies or confronts a terrible catastrophe. O Raghava, therefore, before my senses are confounded, you need to be instated. The intelligence of living beings is fickle. Today, the moon is in Punarvashu, which comes before Pushya. Those who think about the portents have said that the conjunction of Pushya is tomorrow. Your consecration will be during the conjunction of Pushya. My mind is urging me to hurry. O scourger of enemies, I wish to instate you as their heir apparent tomorrow. Therefore, control your soul and observe the vows. Fast with your wife and sleep on the ground on a mat made of darva grass. Your well-wishers will attentively protect you from all directions whenever a task presents itself. There are many kinds of obstructions. Bharata is not in this city and is far away. It is my view that it is the right time for you to be consecrated. It is indeed true that your brother Bharata is virtuous. He has dharma in his soul and follows his elder brother. He is compassionate and has conquered his senses. However, it is my view that the minds of men are fickle. O Raghava, even those who are virtuous and always devoted to dharma may act impetuously. Having thus told him about the consecration, the following days he gave Rama permission to leave. Worshipping this his father, he left for his own house. After this, he left for his mother's residence in the inner quarters. He saw his mother worshipping there. Clad in silken garments, he saw her silently meditating in the abode meant for the gods, worshipping Sri. On hearing the agreeable news about Rama's consecration, Sumitra and Lakshmana arrived there even before Sita was brought. At that time, Kaushalya's eyes were closed and she was meditating. Sumantra was seated there along with Sita and Lakshmana. On hearing that her son would be instead at the time of Pushya's conjunction, she was engaged in pranayama and meditating on the Supreme Being Janardana. While she was engaged in these vows, he approached and greeted her. Rama spoke these words to her, causing her joy. O mother, my father has engaged me in the task of protecting the subjects. Following my father's command, my consecration will be tomorrow. With me, Sita must fast throughout the night. My father, along with his preceptors, have told me this. Let all the auspicious rites for me and Vedahi be performed in preparation for the consecration tomorrow. Kaushalya had desired this for a long time. Hearing this, her eyes filled with tears of joy, and she spoke these words to Rama: O Rama, may you live for a long time, and let those who cause destructions in your path be destroyed. Let my kin and that of Sumitra's find delight at your prosperity, O son. You were born to me at the time of an auspicious nakshatra. That is the reason you have surpassed your father, Dasharatha, in your qualities. My austerities before the lotus being are inviolate. O son, hence the prosperity of this kingdom of the Ishwakus will find a refuge in you. His brother was humble, seated nearby, hands joined in salutation. Hearing his mother's word, he glanced towards him, smiled, and spoke these words: O Lakshmana, you will rule over this earth with me. You are like my second self, and this prosperity will also find a refuge in you. O Samitri, enjoy all the desired objects of pleasure and the fruits of the kingdom. I wish to remain alive and desire the kingdom for your sake. Having addressed Lakshmana in these words, Rama greeted his two mothers and looked their permission with Sita. He left for his own residence. Next chapter 5. After instructing Rama, the king summoned his priest Vasishtha and told him about the consecration the next day. O store of austerities, go to Kukutsha and make him fast. For the sake of prosperity, fame, and the kingdom, make him observe the rites together with his wife. The one who was supreme among those who knew about the Vedas agreed to what the king had said. The illustrious Vasishtha himself went to Rama's residence. He reached Rama's residence with the pale radiance of a thick cloud. The supreme among sages passed through the three chambers on his chariot. Showing respect, Rama quickly came forward to greet the rishi. He emerged from his residence to show honor to the one to whom honors were due. He swiftly approached the learned one's chariot and himself grasped him and helped him descend from the chariot. On seeing Rama, the one who brought pleasure, the priest spoke these words, bringing him joy and delight. O Rama, your father is pleased with you, and you will become the heir apparent. With Sita, you must fast today. When it is morning, the king will anoint you as the heir apparent. Your father Dasharatha is pleased with you, as Nahusha was with Yayati. Having said this, the sage made Rama, together with Vedahi, observe the vows of fasting. Accompanied by the associated mantras, Rama worshipped the royal preceptor. Having taken Kukutsha's leave, he left Rama's residence. Seated there, Rama spoke pleasant words to his well-wishers and was congratulated by them. Taking their permission, he entered his own house. Rama's residence was radiant, full of delighted men and women. It was like a lake populated by herds of crazy elephants and blooming lotuses. Vasishtha emerged from Rama's residence, which was like the royal palace. He saw that the roads were full of people in every direction. Ayodhya's royal roads were crowded with large number of people. Large number of curious people created a melee as those large crowds met. There was sounds of joy. The royal roads were resplendent and seemed to roar like the ocean. All the roads, flanked by garlands of trees, were sprinkled with water. Flags were raised in all the houses in the city of Ayodhya. All the people who resided in Ayodhya, women, children, and disabled, wished that the sun would rise so that Rama's desired consecration could take place. People were anxious to witness the great festival in Ayodhya, which would be like an adornment for the subjects and would increase the delight of people. Those crowds and large masses of people along the royal roads created obstruction like a vyuha. Slowly, the priest reached the royal residence. He ascended up to the palace, which was like the summit of a mountain, tinged by a white cloud. He went and met the king like Brihaspati meeting Shakra. On seeing that he had come, the king got down from his throne. He asked him and was told that all the rituals had been observed. Taking his preceptor's permission and that of the large number of people, the king left them and entered his inner quarters. Like a lion entering a cave in a mountain, that best of residence was full of a large number of women. The residence was like the great Indra's abode. As the king entered the beautiful residence, it seemed to become even more resplendent like the moon in the firmament, surrounded by a large number of stars. Next, chapter 6. When the priest had left, Rama controlled his mind and bathed. With his large eyed wife, he approached Narayana as is recommended in the ordinance. He placed the vessel of oblations on his head. He then rendered these oblations into the blazing fire as offering to the great God. For his own good, he then partook of the remainder of the oblations. Meditating on the god Narayana, he lay down on a mat of kusha grass. Vedahi was controlled in her speech and controlled in her mind. With her, the son of the supreme among men slept in Vishnu's beautiful shrine. He awoke when one yama of the night was still left. He arranged that all the decorations should be made in his house. He heard the pleasant words of Sutas, Magadas, and Vandis. Seated and controlled in his mind, he meditated on the chants for the morning Sandhya. He bowed his head down and praised Madhusudana. Attired in clean and silken garments, he made Brahmanas utter words of praise. Those sacred chants were deep and sweet. Ayodhya was filled with the sounds of trumpets being sounded. With Vedahi, Raghava had fasted. On hearing this, all the people who resided in Ayodhya rejoiced. All the residents of the city had heard that Rama would be consecrated. On seeing that night had turned into morning, they again arranged for excellent decorations on the summits of temples that looked like peaks with clouds around them. At crossroads, along roads, in sanctuaries, and in mansions, in the shops of traders filled with many expensive objects, in the handsome house of prosperous families, in all the assembly halls and all the visible parts of trees, colorful flags and pennants were raised. Large number of dancers danced, singers sang, words that were pleasant to the mind and the eyes were heard. On the occasion of Rama's consecration, people conversed with each other as Rama's consecration approached. They did this in squares and houses. Large number of children were playing at the entrance of the houses. They too spoke to each other about Rama's consecration. On the occasion of Rama's consecration, the citizens made the royal roads look splendid. They sprinkled flowers there and burned incense and fragrances. Just in case night wasn't over, they had arranged for means of illumination, placing lamps in all the trees and lined all the roads. All the residents of the city decorated the city in this way. All of them desired Rama's consecration. Large number of them gathered in the squares and the assembly halls. They spoke to each other there, praising the king. The king, the delight of the Ishvaku lineage, is great souled. He knows himself to be aged, therefore, for the sake of the kingdom, he wished to anoint Rama in the kingdom. Rama, who is favored by all of us, will become a lord of the earth. He can see what is inside and outside people and will be our protector for a long period of time. His mind is not insolent, he is learned and has dharma in his soul. He is devoted to his brothers. Raghava is as gentle towards us as he is towards his brothers. Let the unblemished King Dasharatha with dharma in his soul live for a long time. It is through his favors that we have been able to witness Rama's consecration. These were the kinds of words that could be heard among the citizens, the people who come from different directions, and those who were from the countryside hear them. People came to the city from different directions to witness Rama's consecration. On the occasion of Rama's consecration, the city was filled with people from the countryside. Large numbers of people moved around, and the sound could be heard like the roar of the ocean when it is time for the full moon. The city resembled Indra's residence in a desire to witness the spectacle. People arrived from the countryside in every direction. There was a loud roar like that of the ocean filled with aquatic creatures. Next, chapter 7. Kaikeyi had a maid who lived with her. She had come to her from the household of her king. Roaming around as she willed, she climbed up to the palace, which looked like the moon. From the palace, Manthara looked at Ayodhya with all the royal roads sprinkled with water and strewn with lotuses and lilies. The entire palace was decorated with expensive flags and standards. It was full of people who had washed their heads and anointed themselves with sandalwood paste. On seeing a nursemaid nearby, Manthara asked her, "Why is Rama's mother filled with supreme delight? Despite being attached to riches herself, why is she giving away riches to the pupil? Why are the pupil extremely joyous? Tell me, has the king done something to cause such delight?" The nursemaid was extremely happy and seemed to be bursting with joy. Rejoicing, the told Kubja, Rejoicing, she told Kubja about Raghava's great prosperity. Raghava has conquered anger, and tomorrow, when it is the conjunction of Pushya, the king Dasharatha will instate the faultless Rama as the heir apparent. On hearing the nursemaid's words, Kubja was filled with anger. She quickly descended from the palace that was like the summit of Kailasha. Manthara, evil in his thoughts, was consumed by rage. Kaki was lying down. She went to her and spoke these words: "O foolish one, arise. You confront a great fear and are going to be submerged in a flood of calamity. Why are you sleeping? Why don't you yourself realize what is going to happen? You pride yourself as someone who is fortunate. but harm is going to be caused to your fortune is fickle, like the flow of a river during the summer. Kake heard these angry and harsh words spoken by Kubja, whose thoughts were evil. Overcome by great misery, Kake spoke these words to Kubja: O Manthara, why are you not at peace? One can see that your face is distressed and that you are extremely miserable. Manthara heard Kake's words expressed in sweet syllables accomplished in the use of words. She spoke words that were full of rage, desiring her welfare. Manthara spoke words that enhanced her happiness. She sought to create dissension between the miserable one and Raghava. O extremely great queen, you are no longer at peace, and a miserable catastrophe confronts you. King Dasharatha will instead Rama as the heir apparent. I am submerged in fathomless fear and am full of grief and misery. I am being scorched as if by a fire. I have come here for the sake of your welfare. Okay, my misery has become greater become of your misery. There is no doubt that my prosperity lies in your prosperity. You have been born in a lineage of kings and the queen to the lord of the earth. O queen, how can you not realize that there is a ferocity in the dharma of kings? Your husband speaks about dharma but is deceitful. Though he speaks gently, he is terrible because you are pure in your sentiments. You do not know that you are being gravely cheated by him. He approaches you and unites with you. He comforts you with fertile words. Wherever there is a prospect of prosperity, your husband passes that on to Kaushalya. The evil souled one has sent Bharata away to your relatives with the obstruction out of the way at the op- opportune time. Opportune time, he will establish Rama in the kingdom like a mother. You desire his welfare, however, in the grab of a husband, he is your enemy. O foolish one, you have nourished a venomous serpent in your lap. King Dasharatha has acted towards you and your own son just as a snake or an ignored enemy does. O child, through you always deserve happiness. He has comforted you with wicked and false word. With Rama established in the kingdom, you and your relatives will be destroyed. O Kaikeyi, the time has come to ensure your own welfare. Act quickly, O one who is amazing to behold. Save your son and your own self. Hearing Manthara's word, the one with the beautiful face arose from her bed. He she gave a beautiful ornament to Kubja. Having given that ornament to Kubja, Kaki, supreme among women, again spoke these cheerful words to Manthara. O Manthara, what you have told me bring me great delight. You have recounted something agreeable. What can I do for you next? I do not see any difference between Rama and Bharata. Therefore, I am content that the king is instating Rama in the kingdom. Thus, you deserve to be given something again. These supreme words bring happiness. They are agreeable and cause pleasure. You cannot possibly say anything that is more agreeable than this. Ask for a boon, and I will grant it to you next. Next chapter 8. Full of jealousy, Manthara cast aside that ornament, overcome with anger and rage. She spoke this word, O foolish one, why are you filled with delight? You are immersed in an ocean of grief, but are incapable of comprehending it yourself. Kaushalya is indeed fortunate that her son will be consecrated. Tomorrow, at the conjunction of Pushya, the supreme among Brahmanas will confer greatness on him by making him the heir apparent. With his enemies destroyed, he will obtain great delight and fame. Like a maid, you will have to join your hands in salutation and present yourself before Kaushalya. Rama's woman will certainly be filled with great joy. However, your daughter in law will be unhappy at Bharata's destruction on seeing that Manthara spoke these supremely unpleasant words. Queen Kaikeyi praised Rama's qualities. He knew about dharma, his preceptors have trained him in being controlled. He is grateful, he is truthful in his words and pure. Rama is the king's eldest son. He deserves to be the heir apparent. He will have a long life like a father. He will protect his brothers and servants. O Kubja, on hearing about Rama's consecration, why are you tormented? After Rama has ruled for 100 years, it is certain that Bharata, bull among men, will obtain the kingdom of his father and grandfathers. O Manthara, a beneficial occasion has presented itself now. Why are you tormented? Does he not tend to me more than he does to Kaushalya? Hearing Keke's words, Manthara was extremely miserable. Her signs were long and warm. Her sights were long and warm. He addressed Keke in these words: You do not see the catastrophe. Because of your stupidity, you do not realize it yourself. You are going to be submerged in an ocean of grief that is full of misery and hardship. If Raghava becomes the king, his son will succeed him. Okay, Bharata will be excised from the royal lineage. O beautiful one, all of a king's sons do not inherit the kingdom. If all of them are instated in this way, there will be great anarchy. O Kaikeyi, therefore, kings passes on the various elements of the kingdom to the eldest son, or one with the unblemished limbs. They are instated even through others may be superior in qualities. The son of yours will be completely shattered and dislodged from this royal lineage, O devoted one. He will be miserable and without a protector. I have come here for your sake, but you do not understand me. When your co-wife becomes prosperous, you desire to give me something. Throne of throne. When Rama obtained this kingdom, it is contained that he will banish Bharata to come other country, or perhaps remove him from this world. Even when Bharata was a child, you sent him to his maternal uncle's house. Affection is generated through proximity, even if it is towards an immobile object. Rama is protected by Somitri, means Lakshman, and Raghava protects Lakshmana. Their fraternal love is as famous in the world as that of the two Ashwins, means Ashwini Kumar. Therefore, Rama will not perform the wicked deed towards Lakshmana. However, there is no doubt that Rama will act in a wicked way towards Bharata. Therefore, it is best that your son should go to the forest from the royal residence. These appeals to me, and it will bring great benefit to you. Even if Bharata were to obtain his father's kingdom through dharma, that would be better for your relatives. That child deserves happiness, and he is Rama's natural enemy. With one's own prosperity destroyed, how can one live under the subjugation of another person who has obtained prosperity? Like a lion chasing a herd of elephants in the forest, Rama is enveloping Bharata, and you should save him earlier. Before, because of your good fortune and pride, you slighted Rama's mother. Why will your co-wife not pursue that enmity? When Rama obtains the earth, it is certain that Bharata will be destroyed. Therefore, think of a means to obtain the kingdom for your son and of a reason to exile the enemy. Next chapter 9. Thus addressed, Kakis face blazed with anger, with a long and warm sigh. She spoke these words to Manthara. Right now, I will quickly dispatch Rama to the forest. I will swiftly instate Bharata as the heir apparent. O Manthara, now think of a means whereby Bharata and not Rama gets the kingdom. Manthara, wicked in her thoughts, was addressed in this way by the queen. Desiring to cause injury and violence to Rama, she spoke to Kaikeyi, O Kaikeyi, I will tell you, listen to me, this is the means whereby your son Bharata alone can obtain the kingdom. On hearing Manthara's words, Kaikeyi arose a bit from her well laid out bed and said, O Manthara, tell me the method and the reason. How can Bharata obtain the kingdom and never Rama? Manthara, wicked in her thoughts, was addressed in this way by the queen, desiring to cause injury and violence to Rama. Kubja spoke these words. There was a battle between the gods and the Asuras. The Rajasi, your husband, went to help the king of the gods and took you along with you. O queen, you advanced in a southern direction towards Dandaka. He went to the city of Vajayanta where uh, Timidvaja was. He was famous by the name of Shambhara. That great Ashura was conversant with 100 different kinds of Maya. In the battle, he fought with Shakra and vanquished the army of the gods. King Dasharatha fought in that great battle, O queen. When he lost his senses in the battle, you removed him from the spot. Your husband was mangled by weapon, and you saved him from that spot. O one with the beautiful face, satisfied with you, he gave you two boons, O queen. Your husband offered to grant you two boons. However, you told the great soul one that you would ask for the boons when the time come, and he agreed. O queen, I did not know about this, but on an earlier occasion you yourself told me, ask for those two boons from your husband Bharata's consecration and Rama's exile for a period of 14 years. O Ashwapati's daughter, go and enter the chamber earmarked for you to exhibit anger without any spirit. Lie down on the bare ground, attired in dirty garments. Do not arise and do not say anything to him. There is no doubt that your husband always loves you. For your sake, the great king will even enter a fire. He is incapable of being angry with you. He cannot even glance at you in rage to bring pleasure to you. The king will even give up his own life. The great king will be incapable of transgressing your words. O one who is foolish in nature, comprehend your own good fortune and strength. King Dasharatha will offer you many kinds of gems, pearls, golds, and jewels, but let your mind not be fruitlessly attracted to this. At the time of the battle between the gods and the Asuras, Dasharatha gave you two boons, O immensely fortunate one. Remember him of those and do not get diverted from your own prosperity. Raghava will himself make you rise and give you those boons. When the great king is steady, seek those two boons from him. Rama must be exiled to the forest for 14 years, and the bull among kings must make Bharata the king of the earth. Having exiled Rama in this way, he will not obtain peace. However, with the enemies destroyed, Bharata will become the king. By the time Rama returns from the forest, your son will have obtained enough time to create a foundation for himself. He will have accumulated men and well wishers on his own side. I think the time has come for you to prepare yourself and cast aside fear. Persuade him to withdraw from his intention and consecrating Rama. What was undesirable appeared to Kaikeyi as something that was desirable. She happily responded to Manthara in this word, O Kubja, you speak about what is best. So far, I have not understood what is best. in using the intelligence to determine what should be done. You are the best among all Kubjas on earth. You are the one who has always been engaged in my welfare and helps out what brings me benefit. O Kubja, in determining what the king desires, my intelligence is not equal to yours. There are many Kubjas who are badly placed. They are extremely wicked and crooked. However, you are beautiful to behold. That means Kubja is beautiful. Like a lotus bent by the wind, your chest is proportionate right up to your lofty shoulders. Lofty shoulder. Below that, the stomach stretched out with a shy navel adorned with a golden belt. Your hips make a sound. Your thighs are extremely plump and your feet are long. O Manthara, O one attired in silken garments, as you walk before me on your long thighs, you are as radiant as a swan. Your tall hump is as large as the front of a chariot. The intelligence of Kshatriyas and of Maya reside in you. O Kubja, when Bharata has been consecrated and Raghava has gone to the forest, I will adorn you with a golden garland, O beautiful one. When I am happy to obtain what I desire, I will decorate you hump with that well crafted ornament made out of molten gold. I will adorn your face with auspicious and colorful marks that are made out of molten gold. O Kubja, I will now auspicious ornaments constructed for you. Adorned in beautiful garments, you will walk around like a god. Your unmatched face will be like the face of the moon. Priding yourself above your enemies, you will walk around chief among the best. O Kubja, adorned in all kinds of ornaments, the Kubjas will always serve at your feet just as they do at mine. Kaki was still lying down on a sparkling bed, like the flame of a fire on a sacrificial altar. Praising in this way, she replied to her, O fortunate one, there is no point to constructing a dam when the water has left. Arise, act so as to show the king what is beneficial. The large eyed one was proud of her good fortune, thus urged the queen went with Mantra to the chamber where she showed her anger. The beautiful one took off the necklace that had hundreds and thousands of pearls and also many other beautiful and expensive ornaments. Keke was like a golden rod, recumbing to the words of Kubja. She lay down on the ground and told Manthara, O Kubja, let it be known to the king that unless Raghava goes to the forest and Bharata obtain the earth, I will die here. She spoke these extremely terrible words. The beautiful one cast aside all the ornaments like a Kinnara lady who was fallen down. She lay down on the bare and uncovered ground. Having cast aside the garlands and ornaments, her face was only enveloped in anger. Despite being the wife of a king, she was distracted. She was like a star in the sky, enveloped in darkness. Next, chapter 10. Having constructed that the agreements should be made by Raghava's consecration, the great and powerful king entered the inner quarters to tell the one who should be loved about the good news. She was lying down on the ground there in a state that did not befit her. On seeing her in this state, the Lord of the earth was tormented by grief. He was aged, but his wife was young.